Hello and welcome to Geek First Sidequest, your weekly stop for video game news, reviews, and more here on the Geek First Podcast Network. I'm your host, the Adam Harcaster. Dylan Moss, and I have with me the disappointed Hobbit, Kirkland Patzer. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited to talk some games.
Yeah, a little Saturday morning cartoon version of us here.
Yeah,
We're doing
absolutely.
a very different recording time, which means that if you're on our Patreon, you get this episode very early. So make sure to join the Patreon. You can also join our Discord, have some good conversations with us, leave a review that helps the show out a lot. And also with Patreon, if you help us hit our goal of 50 patrons by the end of July 31st, you'll unlock a slew of extra episodes that will hit the main feeds for everyone, including a couple gaming related ones like our updated all-time game ranking, as well as a Nintendo Cinematic Universe cast, which will be a lot of fun. But those only happen if you help us hit our goal of 50 patrons. Still, we're in July now, so we're in the end game, Kirkland. We got to get there pretty quick here. But hopefully some of you are just waiting until the end. But yeah, help us out. And I don't know what else is there to say. Oh yeah, Diablo 4 review was last week. I just wanted to say I feel like I recorded an intro for that, and then I had my conversation with my two friends doing the review, and then I was gonna edit them together. That whole night, just behind the curtains here, I had a splitting headache, and I think I totally forgot to put the intro on it. So if that episode was abrupt for anyone, I realized that way after the fact that I probably fucked up. But that's what happens. Last week I had a headache. This morning I, slept in. I'm really messing up over here, but hopefully I can get back into the groove of things pretty quick here. But Kirkland, why don't we start by just checking out our draft? Because it's been a bit since we've checked in. There's actually been a lot of changes on this thing. So, of course, back at the start of the year, me, you, Travis, and Taylor all drafted 5 games that are coming out, or that we thought were coming out this year. And then all of these games, when they come out, they get their Metacritic score, and we're going to add up all those points, and whoever has the highest score at the end of the year wins. So Taylor's finally on the board. He still only has one game on the board, but it's a really solid point value of 92 points for Street Fighter 6. So good for him. He's slow to come out, but I think all his stuff will come out. He's got Spider-Man 2, Pikmin 4, Forza Motorsport, and Assassin's Creed. So I think all his stuff's coming. It'll just be in, actually another one here in July, and then a bunch of stuff in the fall. So that's a really good point start for him, but obviously he's still in last place because he only has one game out. I have a little bit more going on now. I have Resident Evil 4 Remake release, which was 93 points, and Final Fantasy 16, which just came out, 88. So I'm at 181 points now. So I'm still hitting a good average. Starfield, who knows what's going to happen there. I'm feeling good about it, but I also felt good about Redfall. We all know what happened there. And then Hellblade's definitely not coming out this year, so I'm going to have to repick that at some point. And Hollow Knight, we still have not heard, I don't think, a single peep about that game this year, so I don't know what the hell's going on with it. I hope it comes out because I think it'll get me some good points, but I'm still in third place. But the more interesting element here is that you and Travis are truly neck and neck. Travis with 324 points between Tears of the Kingdom, Dead Space Remake, Octopath Traveler 2, and Redfall, only giving him 54 for Redfall there. And then you up at 330 with Hogwarts Legacy, Diablo 4, which just came out, System Shock Remake, which came out recently, and Company of Heroes 3. All of yours are doing pretty solid, except for, System Shock Remake's not bad, but it came out with a 78.
Kind of underperformed. It was a little bit lesser than I was expecting. I was expecting at least an 80. Honestly, I thought I'd be above 90, at least for one of my games by now, so a little bit disappointed by that. Obviously, Travis has the big hitter with Zelda, 96, but yeah, I'm pretty happy across the board with my picks. Company of Heroes 3, that's been like the the undercard pick, I think, and yeah, up 81. That's great for me. Come on, shouts out to RTS games.
Yeah, no, your list was very interesting and different than everyone else's, which I liked. You picked some more PC centric stuff. Which, speaking of that, Baldur's Gate 3 is your last and final pick, which I think is set to come out in August fully. Yeah. I think there's been betas and stuff, so I feel like I've heard nothing but just amazing things about that. So I would feel pretty hopeful that that's at least high 80s, maybe a 90, unless there's some disaster or there's like big bugs or something like that. But they've done so many betas that hopefully they can iron out some of those issues before the actual release. But you feeling good about that one?
I am. Travis in our group chat was asking like what the previous games did, and I checked in. Baldur's Gate 2 had like a 78 on Metacritic, which
Ooh, okay.
you know it's nothing too crazy, it's nothing too bad, but
System Shock remake, exactly. Same
yeah.
same rating.
I'm expecting though Baldur's Gate 3 to be a significant improvement, at least 10 points more than that. So I'm hoping for an 88 plus. I think that'll be a really strong send off for this draft.
And then Travis's final pick is Replaced, which is another game that we haven't heard much about. I'm pretty sure Replaced is either a Ukrainian or maybe a Russian studio, so obviously understandable why we haven't heard too much about that if I'm right about that. But I think the plan is after maybe Gamescom in August, the things that are officially not coming out this year, we're going to do a repick on those because last year you ended up winning largely because you had 5 games released and no one else had 5 games released. And so it doesn't even really matter. Even if you got 5 Redfalls at 50 points, you'd probably still like win that kind of thing. So we're going to do the repick at some point, and that'll really be interesting because Travis might be in that realm while you'll probably be closed off here. So yeah, you have a 6-point lead. So that's going to be a very tight race, and I'm very excited about that. And hopefully me and Taylor can get back in there pretty quick because our like average number is pretty high, but yeah we just got to get our stuff coming out here.
I'm happy we implemented that one game swap out thing, just because I'm happy to win, but it makes it a little bit more exciting when everybody has a game coming out.
Yeah, but I mean, you still took a similar-ish strategy where you picked things that were coming out kind of earlier on in the year, so it puts you ahead early on, which is probably feels pretty good, and then you don't have to worry about like, oh, is this thing coming out this year? I mean, Hellblade was a bit of a gamble on my end, but should be coming out next year, so maybe I'll draft it again next year. Let's get right into some of the games we've been playing. So you've been away for a bit. I'm curious what kind of console, handheld, anything you brought with you, or maybe just a laptop or something. So yeah, what have you been playing the last few weeks?
So I went to Manitoba for 10 days. I was away from my main consoles, but I did bring my Switch with me.
Nice.
Great portable device. I love that system. It was the first like true test of me just only using the handheld and realizing like what the battery can really do and
and what it can't do most of the time.
Yeah, exactly. Like there was multiple times like I was visiting my grandpa and he's just extremely retired, so all we did is like hang out, watch movies, and just did that for like a very long time. It was very nice and restful, but there's a lot of opportunity to just have a movie on and then just like be on my Switch. And yeah, that I went from like 100 to 0 on the battery multiple times playing I was actually playing Three Houses again.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, I ended up making a new save under the Blue Lions house, because previously I was with Edelgard and the Black Eagles house, and I think I was just like really not paying good attention to like what I was like giving certain classes to for certain characters. Like I was like, oh, I just want to make this character this type of archetype, or maybe like really lean into like certain budding talents, if you remember what those are, like when you're you remember. So I just like had some regrets in that and just learned some things along the way that I wish I knew from the get-go. And I don't know, I just wasn't really loving like my particular class. It's probably because I was like, I played it and then I came back to it and it was just like, oh, what was I doing here?
You don't have that investment anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So I started with the Blue Houses, and right from the get-go, like I was liking each of the members. Obviously in those games you have a lot of time to just like learn about your particular characters, their backstories, or do those support segments where you just learn a little bit more about 2 different characters and their interactions. And I was just like pleasantly surprised by some of the characters, and that's something that like definitely in Fire Emblem games, I haven't played as many as you have, but from the ones that I have played, they definitely hit like just stereotypical archetypes for a lot of characters. But in this one, I found I was pretty surprised with just how deep maybe like some of the connections were with certain characters. Like maybe certain characters I didn't think had like ties, like they really tied them in. So that was really cool. You've played through it once or twice? Because I know you did Black Eagles at least.
Yeah, Black Eagles was my first playthrough, and then I did it all the way through again on the Golden Deer. So yeah, Blue Lion is actually the one I haven't played. But yeah, I think you're right with the characters. I think they go beyond, like most of them start with that general kind of stereotypy sort of character. That way you can quickly remember who they are, what their deal is. But I feel like they really do a good job, especially, in the second half of the game, I'll say, of really fleshing out more personality stuff and like how they've changed and whatnot. And then also, like even for you, playing through it and having to do battles against Black Eagle characters is like, oh yeah, I know this guy well, or pretty well, so fighting against them has like more stakes. And that's why I think that game is so well made, of just
Yeah.
multiple playthroughs are genuinely very interesting, and obviously from even the element too of gameplay of, oh, I learned all these mechanics and now I can just be much more efficient with my leveling and stuff like that.
Exactly. In the battles, like between the houses, I remember just being like, "Oh fuck, I forgot how hard hitting Hubert is, and just how
Yeah.
insane his magic stats are." Oh my gosh, pardon me. But yeah, so I'm about 20 hours in, I think, on this particular
Nice.
save. I haven't quite hit part 2 yet, but yeah, I've been having really really fun time. Something that's really helped me out and might be borderline cheating. I actually looked up just like a little bit of like a guide for certain like what some people have done for just building out their characters, just different options. Obviously, that's more focused for like the madness or lunatic difficulty, whatever the harder
Right.
one is. So and like I'm not following it to a T, but I just wanted to get like a feeler of what some people have done for builds, and some of them have been kind of surprising. Like Felix, not sure if you remember that character, but he's like a sword master, like from the get go. Like,
Right.
he's just really strong, just melee type character. But some people build him into like a magic user, which I just never even thought
Ooh,
that would have been
that's
an
cool.
option. Like I'm personally not going that route. I'm making him into more of a fighter type class because I feel like that class for this game specifically has been just really really strong compared to like the previous games that I've done. Maybe I just haven't really like made a lot of characters in the fighter brawler
Like
grappler even.
the gauntlet type
Yeah,
fighter. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. Or axes. Like I have a few characters that are mostly going into the brawler, which is the gauntlets or the axe pathway, and
Yeah,
they
they've
just
had
hit
like
so
variations
hard.
of that class, but they've never like Three Houses. That kind of was a new class, and it is very
Mhm.
intriguing with always having like double strikes and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. So like I said, I've had a few of my characters going down that route. My Byleth character, I'm making them into more of a yeah, like that same aspect, like mercenary brawler. I'm gonna eventually go into War Master for them because it's just so
Nice.
satisfying. I think like hitting those, especially with the axes. Like it might not have a super high percentage for the hit, but when you do hit, you have like a 30% crit chance at least for the certain weapon that I'm using. So very very satisfying there. And a lot of the characters for the Blue Lions are very like knight focus, so they a lot of like mounted knights. I think my favorite character right now is actually Ingrid. She's the
Yeah.
like female knight character who's usually goes down like the horse or the Pegasus rider avenue, and I love so much like the fact that you can go in there. They have the Canto ability, meaning like you can attack and then move as well, which I just think it's like so OP because I just like go in there for like hit and run. She's like my Rohirrim. She just
Yeah.
goes in there for the flank and then gets out of peril. I found this game too. They did a good job with the archer class because I feel like in
Yeah, definitely.
specifically Awakening, like it was very lackluster. Like I don't think I ever used an archer class in that one. It just they were
Historically,
always
it's
super
been the
vulnerable.
weakest. It's like just use a magic character because you'll have
Yeah.
the range, but then you aren't screwed if someone hits you straight up, and you're just as
Yeah.
squishy and stuff like that. And then even the leveled up classes were never really that outstanding. So yeah, I think that was one of the best changes with the newer Fire Emblem games is making bows and just more effective in general and usable.
No, exactly. And another strategy that I kind of implemented on this playthrough versus my first time around is kind of not multi-specking my characters, but just trying to spread them out, not making them so like one note focused, like only using a sword, only getting like my sword to like rank A or something. Like for Ingrid specifically, I've kind of been evening out. I've been trying to level out her lance, sword, and bow stats, so like she can kind of have a bit of everything. And the bow implementation with the fact that she's on the Pegasus is just it's so strong because I can get her in, do like a nice like powerful strike with my bow and then just get her out of peril because although they're very strong with the movability or the mobility being on a Pegasus, you're so vulnerable to other archers like when you have a winged unit. So that's been really really just fun. I think like trying to make my characters not so much like jack of all trades, but just a little bit more like they can cover some more bases in case I have a certain situation that I need them to do like a specific ranged attack, and because I have no more movement or something like that. So it's been, like I said, just really satisfying, and I feel like this is my most like the most well off I've been on a Fire Emblem playthrough. Like I just feel like I'm really in a good place where I don't think I've really like failed like any battles really. Like I just feel like I have
Yeah,
my nice
nice.
strategy that I'm going with, and yeah, I'm progressing along quite nicely. Like I said, I'm about 20 hours in. Maybe I'll do an update on my next
Yeah.
side quest appearance, because yeah, it was really really fun just like having so much time to just dedicate to my Fire Emblem time. And
Mm-hmm.
especially like I was saying, like I was gone for like 10 days, super retirement type mode, so like I just I had nothing but time, so all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's like, holy fuck, I've been playing this straight for like 6 hours. The
Yeah.
Switch is just like burning in my hand. I feel
Treehouse
like
is
I've
the
never
perfect game for that for sure.
I feel like I've never heard like the Switch fan come on, but it was just like fucking roaring one of those nights.
Let me rest, Kirkland.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The old meme. I'm tired, boss. I think it was happy when I got home and I was able to like put it back on its Switch dock.
Oh,
and
yeah,
it,
it's like, I'm
it felt
home.
like it was home as well. Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing.
um,
No, I feel like I had such a good time with my second playthrough in that game, knowing all the mechanics and stuff. I feel like I made almost everyone, at least from my main team, like a Wyvern rider, and
Oh
like
yeah.
just everyone. So I could just crush these maps so quickly. I was like speedrunning them because everyone just had tons of movement and could go over like all the obstacles and stuff.
Yeah.
And because there's like Wyvern riders that can use different weapon types and like magic and stuff like that, like you
Mhm.
can truly just do everything, and you can get messed up by certain weapon types and stuff like that. But I don't know.
Yeah.
That was a really fun way to play that game in a totally different way the second time around.
No, 100%. And like a new mechanic or gameplay system that they introduced for Three Houses is like the just wandering around like the monastery, for example. And I initially just thought that was so amazing, and I still do like it, just having these like in between periods. But I did find in between certain like battles, I just wanted to like get right back into it. It like you have to
Mhm.
go through that to just teach your classes or like just upgrade your
Yeah.
units. So I understand why it's there, but I just found there was certain times when it was like, oh, okay, yeah, now I got to get through this to get to the fun action stuff. So maybe like a little bit tedious, not so much. Like I probably wouldn't negate points if I was trying to do a rating for it. It's just there was. I think it was because I was so like into it. Like I was just playing like 6 hours straight. I was just like, oh, I just want to do like the next battle or
Mhm.
or something here. So, yeah, I'm really really liking it. I'm curious, like especially like if once I go back and like finish Awakening and stuff, just like how I would rank, because those are the only two. Or no, sorry, I forgot about Fates actually. So those
Easy
are
to forget about.
the three Fire Emblem games that I played. I think Awakening still is like that number one for me, just because that was my first Fire Emblem experience, and just that story I really really was vibing with. But yeah, I'm curious once
Mhm.
I eventually get my hands on Echoes. That's that new
Well,
one, right?
Echoes was
Or
the other
Engage,
3DS one. Engage is the new one.
That's
yeah,
what
yeah.
it is. Yeah.
But I wanted to mention this too, that on Nintendo Switch Online, this was a week or two ago, and I forgot to mention it, but they just dropped Fire Emblem Blazing Blade on the GBA, which they had announced at that Nintendo Direct that me and you broke down a few months ago,
Yeah.
but it finally came out. So that's another, like, I don't know if you have Switch Online, but that's a good way to jump in and check out another Fire Emblem, and like a much shorter game than these
Okay.
newer ones. So that's a nice thing too. And that's the one that I shared all the stories of my cursed cartridge and all this stuff. So
Yeah.
I haven't gone back yet. I will go back at some point, but I wanted to just say, for anyone who is kind of in your boat, where they played Awakening, played Three Houses, or maybe even checked out Engage, and are curious more about like the roots of the older games, that is a really good one to go back to. That was the first one released in North America, so it is very beginner friendly. There's like a very long tutorial, a little too long for my liking as a huge fan of these series and knows how all the rules work and stuff like that. But I hope people go check that out, and then hopefully they do release Sacred Stones on there as well, because on the GBA is another great Fire Emblem game. And for anyone who does check it out, my recommendation would be to, even what you're talking about here of like really min-maxing your characters, leveling out
Mhm.
all these things perfectly. Don't really bother with that in Blaze and Blade, because the game's very easy and there isn't a difficulty selector at the beginning of the game, but it's intended to be that you beat the game and then you go into a new game plus, and then the game is a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
harder there, and there's more enemies on the maps, and they hit harder, and they're probably hopefully a little bit smarter and stuff too. So I think the game is really like, the first playthrough is more just like, here's what Fire Emblem is, and the second playthrough is where you really go deeper on that stuff. So if I was to play the game again, yeah, I would just rush through it. Don't really worry too much about what, min-maxing, like trying to get level ups off like fighting bosses with weak characters and stuff. Just go through it as quick as you can. You won't really have a huge issue. If someone dies, let it happen, because there are so many extra units in that game that for whatever class you have, you'll have like extras in the auxiliary. So if someone dies, like just let that be part of your narrative and then move on to the second playthrough. So yeah, hopefully you go check that out. Maybe
Yeah.
further down the line, post Three Houses if you're looking for more Fire Emblem. I think that would be a cool one for you to go check out next, rather than back to Awakening or Engage even.
Yeah, no, 100%. Because that was something that kind of crossed my mind while I was playing Three Houses. Was just like I do want to get my hands on some of those earlier games, just to like I understand the base core of what a tactics game, like it's still there, it's still a tactics game, but just like I want to see those roots and just how different the narrative maybe plays, or the different classes, because I'm sure they've implemented a lot of like new classes on the newer titles versus those early days. But yeah, I would love to do that, especially knowing that it is a shorter game. It's a little bit easier to bite that off as opposed to jumping into a new 70-hour title or whatever.
It's obviously a much more simple game, but there is still things that are unique about them, right? Like in Blaze and Blade in particular, like you have a caravan with you that is your supply, but it's like a thing on the map that travels with you, and that's like a very interesting element where you have to like kind of defend your base a little bit. Or in Sacred Stones, like there's a summoner class. It's like a dark magic one where you can like summon a little zombie character to like go and fight for you and stuff. Like they've never done that again, I don't think, since then. So even going back to them, like there is still things that the newer games aren't doing. So worth checking out. But yeah, any other games from your travels?
The only other one that I was playing on my Switch was some Mario Kart on the plane.
Nice.
Classic. I love that game. I didn't get the chance to play because I don't think I've played like the newest cup that's come out in the DLC release, but yeah, I was just having some great times with that game. It's just such a great title. I understand it's been a long time since we've gotten a new Mario Kart, but that game is still just, it's so well made. Like it looks beautiful, it's so fun to pick up, and yeah.
Okay, well, two games I've been playing. One I'm very excited to talk about is that the Nintendo Direct that happened a couple weeks ago. Did you check that out, or do you know any headlines from that, Kirkland?
No, it's really fuzzy. I remember like I was paying attention to the Discord when it was going on, but that was a little while ago, and
yeah,
like I said, I was on vacation mode.
Yeah, exactly. You were playing Three Houses. I can't blame you.
Yeah.
So obviously there was a new trailer for Pikmin 4, which is not surprising, which is a game that you're still picking up, I hope.
Oh yeah, 100%. Day one.
Awesome. Yeah, but with that too, they also announced that they are releasing, and actually already released, the just ports of Pikmin 1 and 2 to the Switch. They there might be a couple tiny little new features in there. Like I think they implemented like motion control if you want, which was something from like the Wii era Pikmin stuff. So but it's like, it's not like an HD remaster. It might be a little bit up-res or something, but it still looks and feels like a GameCube game. But yeah, that new trailer for Pikmin 4 I talked about on Sidequest, I was like, man, this is a fucking sick trailer, and I am like really considering picking up this game now. But then they did Pikmin 1 and 2, and it's like a bundle for like $65 to get both Pikmin 1 and 2, and I'm like, man, I've never played these games. Like that might be maybe I'll go do that, and then if I'm really really loving that, then I'll go pick up Pikmin 4 later. So I did pick up both of them, and I've been playing a lot of the first Pikmin game. So I remember we talked about Pikmin like back in like January or something, or maybe it was February, and you had mentioned that you like rented one, and that's when you played a lot of it.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it was the first Pikmin, right?
It was the first game. Yeah.
Man, this game is so interesting and so cool and so weird, and such a different era of Nintendo too, where it's fucking hard and like brutal and stuff like that. But I feel like I've not heard enough people talk about Pikmin, so I kind of want to just talk about like really explain to people like what this game is all about. So I feel like it's kind of Nintendo's attempt at a bit of like an RTS game, right? In ways like a very simplified but kind of a different, more grounded version. But essentially, the kind of general idea is you like crash land on this planet, and you are trying to recover like 30 spaceship parts to rebuild your spaceship so that you can leave the planet and go back home and all that stuff. And it's almost like a bit of a Majora's Mask effect, where they put like a 30-day time limit on that thing, and then each day is like probably 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes of actual game time. Like you just go during the day, and then when it's nighttime, you have to get back in your ship and escape to be safe from all the monsters that are going to come out at night. But because of that, like there is strictly in game like a time limit of each day, but then obviously an overall limit of like you only have 30 days to accomplish this goal, and it's not like Nintendo-ified. Like that is a very uh restrictive time. It feels like it. I'm on day like 23 right now in the playthrough, and I feel like it is actually kind of a shorter game. And I was thinking about this and why they did this and how they did this back then, because this came out in like what 2001 or 2002 or something like that. It's like 20 years ago now, but think about how much closer that is to that's like 20 years back from when this game came out, was when like video games were just taking off and getting started. And I feel like this is a very kind of weird thought, but I want to go into it, which is that video games kind of started in the arcade, and games had kind of this idea of being like harder and really just replaying the games over and over again, because that was just like the arcade situation. You want to put more quarters in, you want to play this game, you start it from the beginning because you're going to be playing it over and over again. They got to make it super hard so you want to pay quarters and keep going through. And then obviously the NES, like the first Nintendo console, still had a lot of that design ethos because you couldn't save your game. So obviously they made things kind of more difficult to go through. But then they add, in Mario 3, they had like the warp whistle, which was like obviously a new Mario game would not have a warp whistle because you can save your progress and you go through it linearly. But in a game like that where it's like, okay, well, you can never save your progress, that's a good way to like skip to the end and try stuff and whatnot. And I bring all that up to say that I feel like Pikmin has a lot of kind of like arcade game energy to it, and they're making it super hard, and they want you intentionally on this first playthrough them on. They don't want you to get all 30 parts. They want you to get fucked up, maybe get somewhere in the 20s, but there's some that are just way too hard and you just get screwed over. And then, you play the game again, you master it, you get better at it. And then when you go through the second time, I can already imagine my second playthrough. I'm going to be so efficient on those, at least those first 10 days. I'm just going to crush it, and I'm going to really understand that, 100 red Pikmin, I shouldn't just rest on my laurels. That is not enough. I need to like build that bank up continually, because eventually I'm going to lose 50 Pikmin in one squash from an enemy and all that stuff. But man, it is such an interesting game. Like, how much do you feel like you remember of like that general structure of the game?
Yeah, like I definitely remember like the base core mechanics of collecting Pikmin, tossing them around, the time factor. That was something that was just very stressful for a little kid playing that game. I remember playing it and just wishing that I had like a non-timer type aspect to it, just because I love roaming around and just exploring, especially as like a kid. Like I probably wasn't that good at that sort of game. So, but I just loved what it was. It was something so unique, just the whole space aspect and the way that you handle the villains, and just it honestly, like your comparison to RTS, I think that's a really good comparison, because the whole like resource management and just making sure that you're keeping on top of things, like you always got to be doing stuff.
And you're different like specialized Pikmin, that are very much, they feel very, very different in terms of the strengths and weaknesses that they have.
100%. So I think that's something that maybe subconsciously I just really latched onto, because I love my RTS games. I love the strategy element to it, but you just throw on this very unique, very like original space world, and I just love the art style of everything. It was just something that it just hit so many checkboxes in that zone where I just wish I did own the game, because I probably would have done that, of got fucked up and then replayed the game with some new strategy and just learn it that way. Very old school gaming route where you just trial and error. It's like the original Mario games. You just keep retrying it till you eventually get through. So I do remember the base mechanics and everything, but yeah, it's been a hot minute since I played that game.
No, I mean it's cool to see. Like I go back to the trailer of Pikmin 4, which I remember even when we talked about it, I was like, oh, like visually I'm not too impressed by Pikmin 4, but I watch that trailer now. I don't know if it's because I've like played the original one now, but I'm like, this game actually is fucking beautiful. I don't know, maybe there was a glow up even from like those trailers at the start of the year to the one they just did at this direct. But even looking at like, man, this game is pretty simple. There's blue water Pikmin, there's red fire Pikmin, there's yellow kind of electric, but they don't even really have an electric power in this game, at least that I can tell. Maybe that's why I'm bad, is because I'm not using that ability well enough. But then to look at like Pikmin 4, which is going to have the purple like heavy Pikmin, the white I think poison Pikmin, the ice Pikmin, the glow Pikmin. Like there's way more now, where this game was pretty simple. It's just like the primary colors. That's all you needed back then, and they still managed to get this depth out of it, because like the scale of the game feels pretty small, and once again kind of arcade-like, where there's only 4 locations. The first one's like very, very small, and then the other 3 are fairly big, where there's like 8 to 10 spaceship parts in each one. but it's like the space is used so well, and there's such a density in terms of like, there's walls placed in very strategic ways, and then it takes time to break those down to make shortcuts and stuff like that. And then some of those things are permanent, other things you have to do each time you come into a level. But just the way my brain starts to work, where I'm like, okay, here's my goal for this particular day. I'm gonna build out this bridge and get this spaceship part back, but in the meantime, I'm going to try and get through this wall. I'm going to try and set myself up to get to this other spaceship part, because with 30 spaceship parts in 30 days, you kind of want to be getting one spaceship part a day, or if you're not getting one in a day, make sure you're like setting yourself up to get two in the next day. And I know there's been a few days where like 2 or 3 days in a row I'm not getting any, and I'm just getting crushed in this new area. The enemies, one squash destroys half my fleet, and then I don't have many back at base, and I don't have many places to replenish them, and it's very stressful. But then I was playing last night. Probably I was playing a little too late, which is why I slept in this morning. But like, man, I had like a really efficient day where I got 2 new parts, and then I'm like setting myself up for the later ones. But even then, in all the areas, there's a couple parts where I'm like, I don't even know how I'm supposed to get this, or you have to fight a certain boss to get a part. And I'm like, I have no idea how to kill this boss. And that's kind of an exciting thing, too. Like, I already know that I'm not going to get 30. And the way the game is setting it up is like, if you don't get 30, he's talking about how, like, oh, maybe I can still get off the planet if I don't get all 30 parts. So I'm guessing it's like almost like a Luigi's Mansion thing, where in that game, like, you could beat the game, but then it would give you like a rating how you did afterwards, and you'd get like a better mansion, essentially, like the better you did. And I feel like it's going to be a similar thing here, where it's like you can still beat the game with whatever quantity of spaceship parts you get, but you'll just get like a better rating, and you're incentivized to kind of play through and get all 30 parts. And I'm sure there's some bonus secret hidden stuff in there. So man, such an interesting game. And it's cool to see too how like those elements of the time restriction and the 30 days, like it seems like they've fully taken that element out of Pikmin 4, and they've gone more open worldy with it, and you can be out at nighttime now, so that's not just like that inherent thing. And I don't know if there's still that day limit on it, but it seems like that doesn't seem like a modern Nintendo thing to do, right? I feel like they would want it to be a more, not necessarily chill experience, but like take away those time stressors. I feel like they don't really do that as much in games. I guess new Mario games still have like a time limit in a level, but it's usually like way more than you'd ever need. So yeah, it is really cool to go back to the roots of the series, and I'm very, very glad I picked up the original game, and I have 2 as well. So I don't know if I'm going to go into that one right away, because man, Kirkland, after playing this and after watching the trailer again for 4, I'm like, I really want to get that game. It looks so cool.
So good. Especially like you said, like you're playing through the first one where the game started, and then just looking at like the new shadows that they have for Pikmin 4, like for the new Nintendo system. It just, when you put them side by side, it's like day and night difference. It looks gorgeous. And I never played Pikmin 2, but I remember that was something where they got rid of like that time limit aspect to it. So it was something I always wanted to try, but I never got into it. I mean, at least I think that's the route. I'm pretty sure that's the case. I think they also have like another character. I don't know if it's a playable character, but
right, co-op or something.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I'm curious. Maybe one day I'll jump back in that first one, because I like I said, I've never beat it, but I just have a lot of nostalgia for it. I just remember like the first time I was just like collecting things with my Pikmin, and I just have like my whole crew with me, just going back to my spaceship to deliver a part or something. Like it's just such a satisfying little thing. Have your little troops wandering around. I think like the design too of the Pikmin it's pretty. I don't want to say basic, but it's pretty simple. But I love it still. Like there's just these little alien creatures that are just so cute and adorable. These like little seedling type things, almost like the Deku spirit things from Legend of Zelda.
Yeah. No, you feel bad when they get squashed and you lose 30 of them in one go. Like that feels. You see their little spirit like rise up from it too. It's like, man, they really make you feel guilty about it. But I gotta say, even like the narrative is like strangely compelling for me, where I don't know what I was expecting, but it feels almost more adult than I'm used to for Nintendo, and it's pretty sparse the way it's done in there, but crash landing, and then like at the end of each day, Olimar will like do some sort of journal entry, which is both him just like commenting on the journey and where you're at, but then also they like throw hints in there, which I think is cool, so that like as you progress, even if let's say you didn't get a spaceship part in a day. Let's just say you had a really bad day. You lost a bunch of Pikmin. You didn't accomplish anything. You didn't even really learn much. At least there'll be probably some sort of hint in that end of day journal entry that will be something you hadn't thought of yet. Like there's flowers all over the map where you can use to like change the color of the Pikmin that you have. And I did not understand what that did until that journal entry came up, and I'm like, man, damn, okay, I have like 100 blue ones still. I can convert those over to get a bunch of red ones now without having to do all this hard work of going to like just farm them and stuff, because you just don't have time. You don't have time to farm up a bunch of Pikmin, and so I'm curious how they tackle that in the newer games without like the time limit element of it. I guess they maybe just make it more of a resource limit, whereas like each day things kind of regenerate in this game, so you can still get an infinitive amount, but you just don't have the time to do that. But I also want to say, like, after I'm done this game, I cannot wait to go see a speedrun and see like the not like a speedrun, more of like the someone getting all 30 parts, and just see, like, I'm sure people are so efficient with all their movements of like getting 3 or 4 in one day, or even doing a day where they don't get any parts, but they've just set themselves up so well so they can go just gather a bunch in one day or something like that. Can't wait to see what the strategies are, because it's like it has that kind of speedrun like route planning element to it that is really satisfying, from like Neon White last year and other games that try and do that.
100%, and like not so much like how do they glitch out like through this invisible wall to, you know, like skip to the last
right
boss.
I'm sure there's part of that too. Yeah.
but like this is the type of game that like you don't really do that, because you do have to collect all the parts. Like you can't just like go to the last boss, you know, beat him, and then you roll credits. Like you do have to gather all these things, but it's all about how can you min max that, and that's very interesting to me. I do like seeing just how ridiculous some of the speedruns can be with people like glitching through walls or stuff, but this aspect is a lot more interesting to me, because it gets back to that strategy element. Just like, what is the perfect strategy for a game like this? How do you get ahead of that resource timer that you have for the 30 days to get all these things? And yeah, I love that stuff. It reminds me way back in the day, I'd go on like, I think it was like Games Radar or something, to like just read a walkthrough like way back before YouTube.
I love that.
I like, it's just such a nostalgic thing for me. Like me and my cousin, like just going on like the internet and like writing like with a pencil, like writing down like how we get through certain things, because the PC would be in one room and then you'd run back over to like the PS1 or the GameCube, whatever you're playing on at the time, and then you're just like getting through it. Great fond memories of that stuff. So
I love that we got an element of that when we all went back to Arx Fatalis, and like the only guides we could get were like those really old school ones that were handwritten by some guy and formatted in that fun way. But no, it's funny you mentioned like glitching through walls and stuff, but I feel like that's a really interesting element of the game too, where all of them are, you're like, your character can't jump, you're pretty limited on movement, your Pikmin can like use shortcuts by like climbing up twigs, and then the element of like you can just throw them over like a wall that you can't get over. So you could just throw a bunch of Pikmin over a wall and then run around the wall like the long way yourself, so that your Pikmin can get there without any sort of danger, because you just threw them like the shortcut, and then you go around, and then obviously the limits of like only the blue Pikmin can go in water without dying, which is something that the AI, like, they'll fucking just yeet themselves into the water. It's like a bit frustrating, but then there is like a way that you can kind of try and guide them and target them in a way that so they won't do that. But that's a really cool element to it as well, where just like the limits of what you can do versus what your Pikmin can do, but the fact that you can throw them up certain ledges and shortcuts and stuff like that to keep them safe and whatnot is just really cool. So yeah, I'm freaking loving this game. If anyone hasn't played it, which I think a lot of people haven't, it's always existed as more of a niche or like 3rd or 4th tier Nintendo thing. But man, it's such a cool game, and I am very excited to go through the rest of the series now. So yeah, I don't know which one I'll do next, whether that's 4 or 2, or I think after the Pikmin 1, I'm going to play through it again. I really want to do that, I think, before I actually move on to another one. So really glad I picked this up.
Honestly, like through this conversation, you just got me so pumped to want to go back to that first one. So maybe I'll have to pick that up.
You should,
this
man.
Weekend.
$65 for 1 and 2. It's like, it's a pretty good deal, I would say.
And just get me super jazzed and in that mindset for when Pikmin 4 comes out. Because like, although there is a lot new mechanics, brand new mechanics for the 4th game, like the base of what it is Pikmin, you know, collecting them, throwing out your creatures. So I really want to jump back into Pikmin now, because I haven't played it since like elementary school, like way back when I actually you know what it was, I don't think I actually rented it. I think I borrowed it from a friend, and then he like wanted it back like during my playthrough. It was like,
he's like, dude, I gotta do another playthrough. Give me that game back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I think they also announced during that direct that there is like the demo for Pikmin 4 is up, and Nintendo's been very good about their demos having progress carry over. So you could even jump in now, get a little fresh head start on your Pikmin 4 journey. And there's a couple things from that direct that I'd love to talk to you about, but I also don't want to like spoil things for you, because there's some cool things in there that they showed off that I don't know. Whether I am playing the game at launch or not, I'm very excited to do that review with you and just hear how your journey is
Yeah.
going.
That's that's
But
something why I really want to pick up the first game is just compare like our
yeah.
adventures, right? That's because it's the type of game that like so many different people can tackle it in different ways, and just like what strategy went completely awful for you and you just lost all of your Pikmin, like trying to do something, or I don't know. I feel like there's certain things that you can kind of just come across and be like, holy crap, that just saved me so much time going this route versus the other route. I was gonna ask you too, which is your favorite of the Pikmin types so far? Obviously, there's certain ones for certain situations, but I remember in my first playthrough, I always just love the red ones, like the OG one.
That's what you start with.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I feel like it's got to be the blue Pikmin just because there's so much freaking water in these maps, and the fact that they're the only ones there. That I feel like, oh yeah, they do this too. At the end of every level, they show you like the stats of how many Pikmin you have, and there's a fucking graph, right, of all the different colors, and it's so sad when you see the graph just like fucking nosedive because you lost so many Pikmin in that day. But if you look at my graph right now, which I think tracks like the last 10 days, you can just see that steady incline of blue Pikmin because the last world is a lot of like water stuff. And so I've just been, anytime I kill an enemy and I can, get some more Pikmin out of them, I'm just throwing all my blue ones on there to try and boost those numbers up. And now that I know I can throw them in flowers to change the colors around, I feel like I'm just going to switch a lot of mine over to blue because that's what I need right now. Because, yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess the red ones, the fire ones, do they do the most damage? Like, there's a certain boss that, like, I think the hint they give you is that before it shoots out a rock, it, like, sucks in air. And I'm guessing I have to throw a Pikmin there, and, like, it'll suck in a Pikmin and do damage to it. And I'm guessing the fire ones do the most. This is all guesswork. I need to actually test this out at some point. But, yeah, I feel like the blue ones just kind of have the most utility. But, I mean, the yellow ones being able to pick up bombs and throw those around, that's super helpful as well. But, yeah, I do feel like there's a lot more little nuances of their stats that I'm not fully getting yet too, but I'd say probably blue ones for now. Blue, maybe I don't even know what I'd put second in my ranking. Maybe yellow because of the bombs. So red might be bottom for me, but I mean they're all so close. So yeah, I'm excited to get your Pikmin ranking. When you do Pikmin 4, you actually have a lot more to rank there. So
yeah.
Let's take our first break. I have one more game to talk about, and then we have a couple news topics. So we'll be right back. Okay, we are back. So the other game I wanted to talk about came out earlier this year. It's an indie game that I've had on my wish list, and now was the right time. The Steam Summer Sale just hit. It went on sale, and I decided to pick it up. It is called Terra. So I don't know if you've seen this one, or maybe I've talked about it before on Sidequest. But it is kind of, I don't want to call it a city builder. It's more of like an environment builder, but think about a city builder as like the framework of the game. But it's really, really interesting where essentially the setup of it is you're either going to a new planet or it's like you're recovering the planet you're on. But it's kind of like a post-apocalyptic environment or just kind of like completely desert, like barren. The land is not fertile for life or anything like that. And you're going in and you're planting down little structures that first, like, make it so the soil is fertile, and then you go in and you can drop this building that will like make grass on all that fertile soil, and then you're dropping out in like a water pump that'll fill in the areas with like river and or lakes and stuff like that. And then through all these different buildings that you're slowly unlocking, you're kind of building out different environments where you can eventually get enough density that your like trees start to grow, and then you can throw a beehive on that tree, and then it will start to create flowers all over the place. And so you're kind of just building up this barren, just brown, empty, dead landscape, building back this like beautiful, lush environment. And it's just really satisfying to even just visually, and the sound effects. Like they've nailed the aesthetic of this game. It's very, very just pleasant and satisfying to see this kind of world come back to life. And then as you go along, you're getting more complex buildings that are adding different types of environments and stuff like that. And then like you can eventually start to put in life. So something like a black bear needs like to be on a hill, kind of near some trees, near a river or something like that. And so if you can find somewhere in the environment where you've built out all three of those things in a little like small circle, then you can pop that down, and then bears will start to move into the environment. And then, you'll get deer, and then like wolves. To get wolves, they need prey, so you got to put them near deer and near trees and stuff like that. And it's really cool, and just once again, just so peaceful and satisfying to see all this life come back. And then I think my favorite, maybe not my favorite part, but just the whole thing's really cool. The cool cycle of it is once you've done all that, once you've built out all of the plant life again, and you've brought in all this animal life, then your goal is to tear down all the structures that you've created and remove your presence and just leave it as this place, this natural world that exists. And then that's like a huge challenge because you can only, like, in the first level, it's kind of based along this huge river system, and you can really only recycle things from that river system. So I found once I had done all the plant life, got all the animals, checked all those boxes, and I had to tear everything down, I then had to actually go back and change the landscape a bunch. I had to add a bunch more rivers and things like that to reach all of the structures I had built because I didn't know that part was coming. And that's a really cool idea, is kind of like, first it's a city builder, and then it's a reverse city builder, tearing down strategically and precisely the things that you have built this whole time. And then the second environment you go to is more of like a beach island sort of landscape, and you have to build out different biomes of like sandy areas and like mangroves and then like even coral reefs and stuff like that. And then you're using like a monorail system to move all your stuff around, and then you're like recycling by like destroying the end of the monorail system, and then you're going down the line just slowly destroying everything that you've built. It's really, really cool. And then there's even an element too where you have to like create all this green, lush landscape, plains and stuff like that. And then you have to like burn it all down to create ash and whatnot. And then you use that fertile, like ashy ground to like rebuild and stuff like that. So just, they've really got it down. It feels really cool, really satisfying. And yeah, once again, like the sound effects are all great. And then even like on the second biome that I went to, that desert beachy one, was also like pretty difficult, and I had to restart the whole map from scratch, which didn't even feel punishing. I'm just like, man, I want to do this better and more strategically, and you only have limited space to build all these different biomes and bring all this certain plant life in and stuff like that. So yeah, really, really cool game. It's pretty cheap. Like, it was like on sale or not, it's like $20-$30, something like that. I'm playing on PC. I don't know where else you would, but I kind of like it with a mouse and keyboard sort of thing. But really, really cool game. It's been on my list for like the whole year, and I'm glad I finally picked it up. So that's Terra Nil. Really, really cool city builder sort of game.
Yeah, that's like a lot of different strategy elements for, like you said, not a city builder, but just a whatever builder. Whatever
It's like a
builder it
reverse
is.
city builder in a way. Yeah, it's strange.
Yeah, that sounds really unique and fun though. I like just all those different aspects of not just like bringing back these biomes and these animals, but also like removing your presence from it. That's a really interesting aspect, and obviously sounds like it comes with its own set of challenges. So that's really cool. I had never heard of that game before, so I'm gonna add it to my watch list. Keep an eye on that one.
For sure. Cool. How about we move on to some of the news things? Let's start with Gollum. So obviously a couple months ago, Daedalic released their Lord of the Rings Gollum game, which just critically and fan reception was horrible. Like really, really, because it's sitting at a 34 on Metacritic. I asked Taylor to do a really funny thumbnail idea, so I hope when he's done that, I can't wait to show you that. It'll be fun. But yeah, it did not do well critically. I have to imagine sales were not great either. This was an $80 game. It was a full price game. It's on sale for a pretty hefty amount on the Steam Summer Sale right now. But even that feels like a pretty savage price for obviously knowing what this game is and how the quality's not there. And then all of this stuff came out of like after launch. The studio was like just apologizing for the game being bad, which is such a weird thing that should never happen. It was so bizarre. But here's some, I don't know, for some people this might not be sad. It's not necessarily that people are losing their jobs, but essentially that studio, Daedalic, is shifting from development now over to being more of a publishing house. So rather than developing games, they're going to be in the publishing side and all of that. So they had announced that they were working on another Lord of the Rings game post Gollum, and I don't know if Gollum was supposed to have any sort of post-release content, which that still might happen. Hopefully they fix some bugs and stuff like that before they officially switch over there. So yeah, hopefully no one's losing their job in this shift over, but I have to imagine for a lot of people, the creative work of building a game to going over to publishing a game might not be what they want. So I'm sure a lot of people might leave and go and try to find other jobs and stuff like that. But yeah, what do you think about this as the disappointed Hobbit?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the whole idea of what this game was just really strange to me. It was a weird one to just focus on for what this game was. Like, although it kind of makes sense having a stealth-like game with the Gollum character and like just also balancing the aspect of Gollum and Smeagol. I think that is very interesting, but still, just having like a full $80 game based around Gollum is just, it's something that I don't think I would have had in my, maybe in a top 10 of like Lord of the Ring wants, but and like if they really leaned on that Gollum Smeagol aspect, it could be like a Hellblade type situation where like it really leans into like psyche element, but unfortunately it's not really what they ended up doing. I ended up watching that IGN review for the game just because I didn't really hear too much about it, and yeah, just it's pretty disappointing that it did go that route. I feel like when we saw way back in the gameplay or that first gameplay trailer, it seemed pretty limited in like what you could do with the stealth mechanics and the overall movement of the character. And then just watching the review, it kind of just solidified those feelings, which is unfortunate, especially just knowing like they're charging for like the Sindarin version.
Oh
to get like the Elvish language in there is just it's pretty weird to me. They're just taking things out of the game to put it behind a paywall. Just trying to make as much income as possible. I get it is a business, but it's just it sucks when it goes that route. And then for like the repercussions of them canceling or permanently delaying or whatever they said for that next Lord of the Rings game, as well as just shifting their focus away from internal development to publishing stuff. It's almost like they just took a swing at it and then it really didn't go well at all. It's like, hey, just as a business decision, we have to just shift our focus away from this to try and get our profits back in the green, I guess, because I can only imagine how much it costs to make a game like I was going to say to this scale, but just in any scale, it put a lot of effort and time and resources to make those things. So it is unfortunate that it didn't hit really, really well. I like I said, I had like my reservations for it. That's why I didn't say that I was going to pick it up right away. But if it did come out and it just completely surprised everyone, I think that could have been something that really just set off this studio like really well for their next title as well.
Yeah.
Especially just knowing that the next one was Lord of the Rings centered. Man, if they hit really well on this one, and this is just like maybe Lord of the Rings game studio, that would have been sweet. But unfortunately, that's not the route.
Yeah.
So yeah, overall a little bit disappointed, but didn't have my super high expectations for the game. And yeah, like just quick, because when I was watching like the review, it's just like I don't know, like the art style it's pretty lackluster. I think the game mechanic, like the overall feel of what it like, just them moving around with the character, it looks super clunky and just like an older gen type game. And the fact that they didn't really lean super hard into the choices with the Gollum or Smeagol, it's pretty disappointing because I think if everything else kind of sucks, but they did well on that, they could have been like, okay, at least they did something really right. But it seemed like just across the board, it was kind of underperforming, under delivering.
Yeah. Yeah, I mentioned many times on Sidequest that I really wanted to pick this game up, even though knowing that it probably wasn't going to be great just because I had to see what the hell this thing was. And honestly, it was the release date that like really turned me off. And then when I finally got back from my trip and I was like, hey, what am I going to be playing? Just seeing the price and seeing the reviews, I'm like, okay, I guess I'll wait at this point. And I still will pick it up. I'm probably waiting for like a good 75% off at this point before I dive in and check this thing out. But, I will talk about on SideQuest at some point in my life because I still am very curious about some of the things they did here. But yeah, I don't know. I guess the thing is for me, like even if this game wasn't great and it had its issues and all this stuff, I felt like, if the studio is making another Lord of the Rings game, it's not like them doing that means that no one else is making Lord of the Rings games. Like their Embracer has Lord of the Rings now, and I'm sure they're just gonna fucking pump stuff out, and a lot of it will be bad, and hopefully we'll get a couple diamonds in the rough sort of thing. But I feel like no matter what the studio made next, it probably would have been better than Gollum. They probably would learn their lessons there, get some improvement there. They can iterate. They have their engine and all this stuff, and like it's hard to get worse than what Gollum is, I guess. So I guess from that way, it's a pretty easy thing to say that it'd be a better experience the second time around. But whether it's a Gollum sequel or hopefully maybe just something new, they try some other idea in Lord of the Rings world. I was hopeful that like it would have at least been an improvement, and I would have liked to see what they tried to do. Because even Gollum, like. Okay, maybe the game itself wasn't great, but it was really fun to talk about this game and look at all these trailers and just like talk about that Sindarin DLC that they were doing. Like, I don't know, it came with some good discussions along the way. So, yeah, it is too bad that we're losing a development studio here. And I am curious where this comes from because the weird thing with this was it was Nacon, I think is the name of the publisher that Daedalic is under, and so I guess Daedalic will maybe just kind of move towards that Nacon side of things. But obviously Embracer has it now, and I wonder if Embracer was like, no, we don't really want to give you the rights to make another one, or maybe that stuff would have happened before that acquisition anyway, and that's why they were already set up to make another one, or if it was just Nacon being like, okay, the amount of money that we had to spend to make this thing, we maybe were in the red in terms of people were not picking it up, and then the reception is so bad that they didn't feel hopeful on a sequel, that it would, be worth the investment from them. They'd probably have to invest more money to make a better game the second time around too. You think about that kind of thing. So, yeah, I'm curious where it comes from, whether it's Embracer or was just internally was a decision they made. But yeah, it's too bad, and I guess it'll be a while before we see some more Lord of the Rings games, just with how recently that Embracer thing happened. But when me and Travis talked about this recently, that Embracer did say recently that they want to go hard on Lord of the Rings and squeeze that IP dry in terms of just making everything they can with it in the film space and probably on the game space as well. So we'll keep an eye on what happens next with Lord of the Rings, of course. The other thing, Lord of the Rings goes down, but then another thing comes up, another IP rises from the ashes, which is kind of a surprise one. So last week there was an Annapurna interactive showcase, which they do every year. They're pretty low key. A lot of the time, these showcases are just like, here's a game that came out only on one platform. Here it's coming out on other platforms, which they did, like Stray's coming out on Xbox now. There was other things like that in this showcase. Overall, it was not the most exciting showcase, but the one big exciting thing is that Annapurna announced that from their internal development studio, which I don't think has made anything yet, it's kind of a newer venture from them. They started with publishing and then are moving to development, which is probably a good way to go about things. Get into the gaming space, learn a lot about it, work with a bunch of developers, and then start your own development studio and go from there. So I think the timing on it seems pretty good, but they announced that they are doing Bladerunner 2033 Labyrinth is the name of this game. So it came with a trailer where they showed off a little bit, but none of it seemed like gameplay. It's a 3D game. It's dark. It's Blade Runner. It's what you expect from that, but we don't really know anything else about it, and we don't have too much information. I think one of the things I did see when I was doing some research is that either the studio head or creative director, one of those people, most notably worked on What Remains of Edith Finch, which is cool because me and you both love that game, and narratively might be just my favorite narrative game ever. Like, it's such a well done story there. So that's a good thing, and I don't really know what to expect for the rest of it. I don't think we know how many people are working on this game. We don't really know a genre. We don't really know a release date. So we don't have much information to go off, Kirkland, but does this basic idea get you excited?
Not so much, just for the fact that I've never seen Blade Runner, not the first nor the second one to this day. So I'm pretty unfamiliar with the franchise, and the fact that this is like based in between those two, I'm not sure if it like follows the main story or anything like that, or if it's just based in this world. I just am so limited on my Blade Runner knowledge. The trailer looked really cool, especially the way it ended with like that wolf, and I was just like, I don't know what's going on in here, but this is a very dystopian looking world, and I do like the overall feel of it. And I don't think I've played any Annapurna game other than Edith Finch, but I mean, like you just said, I think that is my favorite narrative game of all time. It hit me so hard in the feels and just made me feel different things throughout that adventure. So I definitely want to play more of their titles, and this is something that I think once I do see those Blade Runner movies, I'll probably be in that zone and just really want to jump on this. But I thought for the reveal trailer, they did a good job with it. I love the aesthetic to it. I did like the narrative of it, and just some creepy, weird things going on. So I'm excited to just hear how it is, and because I feel like the Annapurna Interactive, like I said, although I haven't played a lot of their titles, I've just heard. It's almost like an A24 comparison, where like they just make unique and interesting games that they have like their own gameplay feel, their own aesthetic feel, their own like just narrative feel to it. So I like that they're pumping stuff out like this, and hopefully this one just hits like, I'm not gonna say like just blows it out of the water, everybody's playing this, but just the fact that it is an IP that's already established with the Blade Runner series, I hope this just gets a lot of those Blade Runner fans, like someone like Travis, that like I don't think he's played any Annapurna game, but I know he loves Blade Runner, so I would love to just hear if this is something that he really wants to jump on. I don't really know what his thoughts are on it so far, but
yeah, I think he said he's kind of intrigued or interested, but it's hard to say too much without seeing like gameplay and stuff like that. And it's always tricky from like a new development studio. You just don't really know what to expect. But yeah, I mean, you made a good point there about Annapurna. Like they're just really great publishing house right now. I'd put them in a tier, maybe just below Devolver Digital, but they're right there where like everything they're publishing, everything they're putting under their umbrella is really cool, interesting stuff, great indie games, and some of them are even like visually and scale wise like pretty like Stray's a very impressive game for like what an indie studio makes, like really beautiful, like the size of that world, the visual detail and all that stuff. And then I mean Outer Wilds is the big one for me from Annapurna, where that's just one of the best games ever made. And so obviously it's different from them developing, from them having the good eye of publishing. But I at least have some faith, and I'm very curious to see kind of what other things Annapurna looks to do from their kind of internal development studio or studios perhaps in the future. I am a huge Blade Runner fan. 2049 was my favorite movie in that year and is just probably one of my favorite movies of all time. Really, really great stuff. And then I do really enjoy the original as well. But yeah, I think this being set kind of pretty far away from the other two movies. I don't think it'll have much connection to those. I think you'll see maybe some references to certain corporations or characters and stuff going on in the world. I think it's actually supposed to take place kind of pretty close. There was like a short, I think it was like an anime release. It was like maybe like 10-15 minutes or something like that called Blackout, and this is supposed to be like happening right after that time. So I think that's the kind of time period they're aiming for, which is a cool setting. But I think honestly, there's so much room to play in Blade Runner because it's a potentially huge world, but we've seen very little of it because it's not one of those IP that has been squeezed dry. There's not been very many games, if any. I think there's maybe one like way back in the day or something, like some weird old school like NES sort of thing, like one of those weird tie-in games. I'm not too sure. But yeah, I'm hopeful for this. I think it's cool. I like the setting of it, and I think they have a lot of room to play, and I'm really curious to see what the genre is and whatnot. I feel like it will probably be a very narrative-focused thing, but hopefully it's a bit more than visual novel. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just think for what they showed here, I expect something a little bit different. Labyrinth is not a Blade Runner-y term that I think of. It doesn't make me think of, oh, that's the name of a certain corporation, and therefore we know it's going to be related to this. But what do you think Labyrinth is supposed to mean? Is it supposed to mean this is like a puzzly game? Is it like a labyrinth in terms of like the narrative is going to be labyrinthian and that it moves around and has all these things? Do you think there's anything we can derive from that subtitle specifically?
If I had to make a guess, especially with my limited Blade Runner knowledge, I I don't know if that is representing a corporation. I don't know if there's a physical labyrinth in this Blade Runner world that our main protagonist will be going through. But I don't know, just the fact, like the vibe I'm getting from this trailer, I think it will be more in that puzzly type aspect, like just solving the labyrinth of the story or some challenge that our main character will have to go through. So yeah, I kind of a loose answer, but I'm going to lean more into that puzzly type aspect as opposed to a physical labyrinth that you have to, fight some mythological creatures in that grand labyrinth. I don't think they're going down that route, but
yeah. I don't even really think of Blade Runner as a huge like there is action moments in those movies, of course, but I think it's more about the atmosphere and the vibes than it is like, oh, we got to have big action set pieces. So I don't really need big action moments in this game. I would love if it's just more like exploration, narrative focus, like a lot of dialogue, and just getting to see other parts of this world. That's what I'd be pretty hopeful for. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. We don't really know any more information than that, but hopefully they do some more interviews in the coming months here to explain the game, or maybe this is like a very early announcement. But I think it is at least cool for Annapurna to come out and be like, hey, we are developing our own stuff now. And hopefully that's one of many, and hopefully they get it right. So I think that's pretty much it for this week, Kirkland. A little short and sweet episode, but it's very fun to catch up, talk about some of these games we've been playing, some news stuff. So thank you for joining me. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll be back, of course, next week with another spicy episode of Sidequest. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye.